Less than 9 months ago, Huddersfield Town stepped out at Wembley in the Championship playoff final, the £170 million game against Nottingham Forest. This week, they sacked their second manager of the Championship season and have fallen from being 90 minutes away from promotion to the Premier League into a relegation fight that makes League One football next season a big possibility. Here's my take on what's been behind Huddersfield's disastrous downfall. To set the scene, we really need to quickly go back to Huddersfield's relegation in 2019. They arrived in the Championship under new ownership, but Phil Hodgkinson's deal to take the club from Dean Hoyle used those lovely old parachute payments as leverage, and Huddersfield kissed goodbye to an advantage successfully used by many relegated clubs. Danny Cowley was brought in to get the club away from the bottom of the table in that first season, but new head of football operations Lee Bromberry went in a different direction and replaced him with Carlos Corberan at the start of the 2020-21 season. Now, Corberan's first season wasn't great, 20th place finish, but the decision was looking like an inspired one for 21-22, with the team transforming into a promotion contender. On the pitch, things were looking good, but off it, owner Phil Hodgkinson's pure legal firm was going into administration. With Huddersfield on their way to securing a playoff spot, Hodgkinson turned to former owner and still minority shareholder Dean Hoyle to essentially bail the club out. Hoyle did the necessary off the pitch, and Corberan did the necessary on the pitch, taking Huddersfield all the way to Wembley for the Championship playoff final. On the one hand, this game is the EFL's biggest showcase event, but given the horrific financial tightrope between the EFL and the Premier League, on the other hand, it can also be a bit of a game of Russian roulette. Win the game and your future, well, certainly your short-term future, is basically secured. Lose it, and well, why don't you ask Derby and Sheffield Wednesday fans about that one? Huddersfield, of course, did lose the playoff final, and that set off a chain of events and decisions that would lead us to where we are today. First out the door, I guess immediately after that game, were excellent loanees Levi Colwill and Danel Sinani returning to their clubs. Also, off went head of recruitment Josh Marsh, headed for Swansea. Perhaps the biggest loss of all was Carlos Corberan himself, the manager who had taken them from the bottom six to the top three that season, quit in July, just 3 weeks before the season commenced, presumably when he got wind of the club's financial situation and transfer plans. It became quickly apparent that those transfer plans were to cash in on key assets like Pippa, Harry Toffolo, Lewis O'Brien, as well as have a bit of a squad clear out further down the pecking order. Bromby's choice to replace Corberan was to promote Danny Schofield up to manager. Schofield, unfortunately, lasted just 69 days before the club fired him. Seemingly a case of nice guy, not quite ready, bad appointment. If Schofield was apparently too calm and placid, then Lee Bromby seemed to go from one extreme to the other with his next managerial choice. In comes Mark Fotheringham. The Scotsman was, intense, and although I would never ever want to see anyone fail, it did seem pretty obvious from Fotheringham's early interviews and press conferences that the players were either going to lap his personality up or reject it completely. Fotheringham did at least outlast Schofield, but his 133 days before being sacked is nothing really to shout about. During Fotheringham's reign, there was more manoeuvring above him. Dave Baldwin was brought in as managing director by Dean Hoyle for apparently 2 reasons. Firstly, due to medical advice that Hoyle shouldn't really be doing the job himself, and secondly, and probably more pertinently, to get the club fit for a sale and find a new buyer. That means we sit here today with Huddersfield looking for a new owner, their fourth manager of the calendar year, and a way out of the Championship bottom three. Analysing the various successes and failures of EFL clubs over the years on this here channel has led me to reach several positions on what works and what doesn't, and some catch-all definitions I've come up with do unfortunately seem to apply to Huddersfield at the moment. The first one, you've heard me say many times, owners relegate clubs. Now look, I am not here to have a pop at one man whose business went into administration or another one who seems to have had to kind of step back in and save the day. But in football, if you're standing still, then you are going backwards. And the club being in this ticking over position for too long whilst they're waiting for a sale isn't really going to work. The next one is chaos relegates clubs. Moreover, stability equals success. And it's just been a revolving door at Huddersfield, hasn't it? Out of the starting 11 from Wembley last May, 7 are now no longer at the club. Only 2 started the club's most recent league game at Blackpool. And that is not to mention 5 managers departing in 3.5 Championship seasons, and what will likely be a 3rd different ownership regime when this next sale eventually completes. And a quick rise is often followed by a quick fall. Even though it's thrilling for success to come out of nowhere and for a team to fly up the table, it does normally end in a bump. I'd cite Chris Wilder's Sheffield United and Valérien Ismaël's Barnsley as prime examples from elsewhere in Yorkshire, actually. Look, of course, the run to Wembley last year was absolutely tremendous, but if rapid success equates to a near miss, sometimes that can present a whole lot of problems that just sliding up 4 or 5 places in the table wouldn't have. Interesting then that I should mention Chris Wilder and Valérien Ismaël. They are both on the bookies' shortlist, for what that's worth, as the replacement for Mark Fotheringham. So is Danny Cowley, who we've also mentioned in this video. The batting average is starting to waver for Huddersfield managerial hires. Obviously, Corberan, however that ended, was a big tick. But this season, 2 really poor choices, 2 inexperienced bosses really thrown to the lions, and those doing the hiring seemingly not learning from their mistakes. They're really going to need to for this next one. Bring in the right person, finish above that relegation line by whatever means necessary, get the club sold as a Championship entity, and, fingers crossed for Huddersfield fans, hopefully the story then moves on in as positive a way as possible. But another bad hire and Huddersfield are going to go down, and perhaps the pool of interested parties to buy the club diminishes as and if they become a League One club. Let me know your thoughts as ever down there in the comments on this season to forget for Huddersfield. And I guess, most importantly now, who should be the new manager at the John Smiths. Now, just so I don't look like I'm trying to be wise after the event, we did smell trouble fairly early in the season on the channel here. Why not click up there and you'll see my take on that infamous opening day game against Burnley, with the Clarets heading in one direction and the Terriers in quite the opposite.